Yesterday, I told you that we at Sovereign Society are high on Uruguay. We've had a couple trips down there. We've taken a lot of people with us. They've thoroughly enjoyed it. And based on your questions, you guys had tons of questions yesterday for Juan Fisher when he was up here talking about farmland in Uruguay. I can tell that you guys are interested too. So our next speaker is going to continue the conversation on Uruguay. So if you would, please welcome to the stage Sancho Santayana, and he's going to talk about Uruguay. Sancho?
Good morning. Okay, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you. I want to especially thank you all, but particularly those who have already set a foot in Uruguay and have made that decision. I know that it's a big decision for someone living in the U.S. to all of a sudden, decide on this small country so far away and all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going down to Uruguay, I'm going to settle there, either part-time or full-time. And to many people, well, probably to your neighbors, sounds crazy. But what I've seen is that the people who have taken that step, they have been really, really very happy, and they have realized that Uruguay has provided them a real solution for some of the goals that they were trying to achieve regarding their lifestyle and other matters. So, well, thank you very much for being here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Uruguay and basically why Uruguay allows for or offers a perfect balance between investment and lifestyle. So, for all of you who are here, you have probably heard about Uruguay already because, of course, through the Sovereign Society, you've read about Uruguay, and so you have some knowledge about it. But probably most people who you know and who you mention Uruguay to, well, when you talk about Uruguay, then they probably look at you and they say, what? What are you talking about? What is this? Where is it? I've never heard about it, So Uruguay is pretty well unknown destination. It is a pretty well unknown country. And so the reason or the question is, okay, but why is it so little known? How is it completely under the radar? What's going on with Uruguay? Well, really what happens with Uruguay is that nothing ever happens in Uruguay. And, well, that is the main reason why no one has, very few people have heard of it. And so, of course, this is an extreme way of putting it, but if you think about it, in the end, this is really this is the real reason. Except, of course, for this, the only thing that Uruguay is mostly well known for, well, is for football. And, well, once in a while we don't do that bad, and so we are on the international news, and Uruguay all of a sudden, well, it hits a headline or two around the world. But the bottom line is really that no news is good news. And this is what Uruguay is about pretty much. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk about the different aspects of the country, and I'm going to be mentioning some of its main characteristics in each one. But let's start by the basic, which is the territory. Uruguay, as you can see there, of course on the yellow circle, it is way south in South America. It's south of Brazil. And it's a very small country. You can see that from north to south, it's only 400 miles. And here at the bottom, you can see the south south of Uruguay, the south coast, which concentrates basically about 60% of the population. And so on the south coast, you have Montevideo, which is the capital. Uruguay has a population of 3.4 million people. And most of them are located in Montevideo and the south coast. Montevideo is the capital city, and we have 1.5 million. That's the population. Now, as you can see there, the distances are very short. From Montevideo to the coastal city of Punta del Este, which you can see there to the east, is just an 1.5 hour drive. And towards the west, towards Argentina, you have Montevideo to Colonia, which is about a 2-hour drive. So really, in about 3.5 hours, 4 hours, you have crossed most of anywhere that you would be interested in Uruguay, which is all along the coast. So basically, this is what most of Uruguay, this is what it is. We have 68,000 square miles of fertile grassland. We have no deserts. We have no mountains. We have mild weather. There are huge water resources. There are rivers all over the country. They cross the country in the middle, on the sides, all over the place. The country sits on the Guarani aquifer, which is one of the largest in Latin America. We have no natural disasters. There are no earthquakes, no tsunamis, no hurricanes, no floodings. You see, when I tell you that never really ever happens, well, this has to do with it, certainly. And so how has this, all these characteristics that we've been talking about, how have they determined Uruguay's development? Because, of course, the territory and how it is set up has a huge impact on how actually a country develops and how its society develops, you know? Well, basically, the biggest impact has been that it has transformed Uruguay, has made Uruguay one of the world's champions in per capita food production. So, the 68,000 square miles of natural grassland and natural pasture, they have helped, or they're the basis for turning the country in one of the world's largest producer, well, definitely per capita. But not only per capita, we produce a lot of food, but not only per capita, we are also, for example, the 8th world exporter of beef. We are a tiny, tiny country. We have 11 million cows. We are 3 million people. And so last year we had the largest per capita consumption of meat in the world at 68 kilos per person of beef. And that's not considered, that doesn't include pork or chicken. It's just, you know, cow meat. And so eating meat is, well, it's obviously a very important for Uruguayans. So let's talk a little bit about the people. Basically, most of Uruguayans are European immigrants or from European descent. And this is not a recent immigration. This is an immigration that happened 200 years to anywhere between 200 to about 50 years ago. And there's no native population. Uruguay doesn't have a native population as other countries in Latin America, that they have, you know, the Incas, the Mayas, you know, or no. Here there was no native population. It was just the natural grasslands, and there was no human development. There were some smaller tribes, very not too developed, and well, during the process of colonization by the Spaniards, they were either exterminated or they fled to Brazil and to other places. 90% of the population is white in Uruguay. By the way, every slide that we're going to be seeing here, none of this is from any image bank or anything. This is 100%, every slide is a slide from Uruguay, okay? Now, Uruguay has a very strong middle class and has a very high literacy rate. Definitely one of the greatest in Latin America, if not the greatest. And the strong middle class, what's interesting about this is not something that has happened in the past a few years, because, for example, in the past 10 years, Uruguay has had a tremendous growth, economic growth, and the standard of living has raised. But what's interesting here is that the strong middle class that we have has not become a strong middle class in the past years. It has been like that for many, many years. It is in the structure of our society. So how are we organized? Well, our political structure, and this is our Congress, it is a democracy. Just recently, it was rated as the highest level of democracy in Latin America. We have 4 political parties, and basically, it is a country where the rule of law is respected, where the rule of law really means something, and it's respected from every agent of society. We have, of course, the separation of powers, which one thing is the concept, another thing is that it really exists in reality. If you look at other countries in Latin America, well, it is very common that the separation of powers is nothing but words. And the executive tries to control, of course, the judiciary, the judicial, and wants to take control of everything. Well, really, in Uruguay, every power of the state is truly independent. And that, of course, is on the basis of how Uruguay has evolved, because that gives guarantees to our society, and that, of course, also gives freedom to our people. This is just well, part of the... Now, what about the government? This is here, we have our president there, second on the right, and this is some of the ministers of state. Basically, our government has very low corruption. Again, you look at so many other places in Latin America, huge levels of corruption. Of course, there are countries with more and less, but Uruguay has an extremely low level of corruption. The government is transparent. The officials are accessible. It's common to see, for example, I have seen previous presidents just walk on the street with not even a guard, just with someone on the side, and that's it, and he's there. And you say, but this is crazy. Well, that is common. Ministers of state walking on the street, that's normal. Well, what about education? Well, we have a 97% literacy rate. Uruguay has been a pioneer in what is called the One Laptop Per Child program, which in Uruguay is called Plan Ceibal. By this program, what happens is that the state provides one laptop per child, as the name says, in order to start working towards bridging what is called the digital breach. And so very recently, this picture was taken when the laptop number 1 million was delivered to one of our, to a child. So what about healthcare? Healthcare, this is one of the institutions in Uruguay. It's called, well, the British Hospital. And there's a really very high standard in the private sector for healthcare services. For you to have an idea, a normal a health service like in the Hospital Británico or in the Española, which is another one, would run about $200 per person per month. Also, for example, things that perhaps that happen in Uruguay is that you want an appointment with a doctor, well, they'll give it to you right away. You don't have to wait like weeks, or of course not even months. Usually it's just a couple days from the day you ask for it, and many times it's just, on the spot. So here you can see some of the infrastructure. I want to share with you the kind of infrastructure that our healthcare system has. So this is, here you see the equipment. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that if you're in Uruguay, and of course healthcare is one of the main issues that you need to have covered, well, you would be very well taken care of. We have, top-level technology and good service. This is, for example, a bedroom, okay? So you can see it's modern, it's good. What about internal security? Well, what does this have to do with internal security? Well, there's something amazing that happens in Uruguay, for example, in Punta del Este, one of the summer resort city. It's very common to, for example, in summertime, the high season, at 4 o'clock in the morning, to see young girls hitchhike on their way out to when they come from partying, and they hitchhike to their house. And this is a bunch of 15 or 14-year-old girls hitchhiking at that time at night. Now, it looks crazy. I mean, I don't know what countries in the world you can see this, Well, that does happen in Uruguay. So basically what I'm trying to tell is that in Uruguay, there is a low crime rate. Now, of course, it's not that crime doesn't exist. It does exist, as it exists everywhere. It's just that it's lower, and it is compared to other places. There is theft. Yes, it does exist, and but it is a level that it is definitely the best or one of the best in Latin America. As I was telling you, there are no concerns, no serious concerns. It is common to see a minister of state just walking down the street with no guards, or just having lunch, you know, at the table. I just last week I was having lunch in Garcia, which is a restaurant in Carrasco, one of the neighborhoods, and there was a minister just, you know, just eating at my side, and then he left, and he just left walking, you know, and nobody even looks at him, and nobody even pays attention to him. So that is, you know, that's kind of in the spirit of a simplicity that Uruguay has, you know, and respect for the other. Now, what about national security? And, well, yeah, this is not from a museum, you know. This is not our Air Force Museum. This is our real, these are our airplanes. So but why this is important, and why do we have these airplanes, you know? Well, really, because we don't need any. We have no conflicts with any nation. We have no terrorist threats nor any terrorist activities. And unfortunately, and really, we are far away, and we are completely out of the way of any possible world conflict. So for this reason, really, well, there are no threats to the national security in Uruguay. So really, we do have armed forces, we do have Air Force, but, well, they don't have a lot to do, really. They take care of these airplanes. No, seriously. Okay, now what do we do as a people? Well, first and foremost, Uruguay produces food. That is what we do. That is what we live out of. That is the main income of Uruguay as a whole. We produce enormous amounts of food to, well, enormous, of course, to as a per capita, as I was telling you before. But we are a player on the international scene in all the aspects of producing, for example, agricultural exports like soybean, like wheat, like rice, like meat. And then in the past years, we have been incorporating some, these are just like starting, like things like olives or blueberries or oranges are already well established. But this gives you an idea. Now, meat, as I was telling you before, this is what we're seeing here. This is a bull at the rural exposition, as it is called, which is once a year. It is very well organized, all of the agricultural activities. There's a fair once a year. Well, there are many, but there's the main one. Uruguay is very concerned in improving all of its production, in improving our animals to produce meat, in improving, of course, our harvests. So regarding meat, and this is an example of the kind of things that Uruguay does, and it's very interesting. It's the first country in the world that has implemented a plan which provides 100% traceability to every cow that lives in the country. Every cow is identified. The 11 million, yes, each one of them is identified, and it is known exactly where they are, who and where they're moving to, and of course this is a huge benefit in order to sell our product, our meat, at a premium in the international market. And this is where Uruguay is going towards. Well, here we see, of course, food production. We have a strong dairy industry also. We have some olives, as I was telling you, as a nation, as something which is just coming up and starting. Now, the other aspect of the Uruguayan economy, services. You can see here the tourism. We have about 3 million people who come into Uruguay every year. And this is in the summer resort city of Punta del Este. They come mainly from Argentina. They also come from Brazil, and then from other places like Chile, and then internationally from Europe and the US. But mostly, most of the people who come as tourists to Uruguay are from Argentina and from Brazil. The services, well, of course, we have a strong financial web of services, and between other things, Uruguay is very interesting because there's free flow of capital. You can bring your money in, you can take your money out, and nobody's going to put any kind of impediment into doing that. Of course, you have to prove that the money is lawfully obtained. But once you're able to demonstrate that, which is quite simple, then of course you are completely free. So this is one of the reasons why Uruguay has developed a very strong service industry in the financial industry. Now, continuing with services, for example, logistics is another aspect of our economy, very important, up and growing. We have several free trade zones. Uruguay is becoming more and more a regional hub for merchandise, merchandise that comes into Uruguay, and from Uruguay it is delivered or distributed to Argentina and Brazil and Paraguay. I want to share with you here also the quality of the services and the infrastructure. This is one of the free trade zones. This is a services free trade zone. What we're seeing here, this is office buildings, and so this is just one of the several that they are. This is the kind of thing they do. They provide infrastructure for multinationals who want to settle in Uruguay and set up their operations. It's very common for multinationals like Sabre International, which is for a tourism industry, well, a huge corporation. They have their call centers here. So that's one of the. Now, services, of course, the restaurants and hotels is a big part of the Uruguayan economy also, related to tourism. So we have a lot of people employed in that sector. Now, this is a shopping mall, the commerce. Commerce is, of course, the other aspect of our economy. We have top-rate shopping malls, and with, well, pretty much, you know, anything that you can ask for. And they're modern, and you know, their well, availability of products and everything is of good quality. Now, what about infrastructure? Uruguay has top-rate infrastructure also. Here we see, this is the Montevideo airport. Just very recently, or just a few years ago, it was inaugurated. This is a design that well, it won several international prizes. It is modern, functional, and as we can see here. This is another airport. This is the airport in Punta del Este. Once again, you know, modern, new, functional. You come into Uruguay, you get off the airplane, you go into this airport. Really, you feel well. It's something that, you know, it welcomes the people. So, well, of course, we have the port, and this is part of our logistics structure. Now, here, for example, this is the bus terminal. The Buquebus terminal in Montevideo. Buquebus is a company that provides a ferry service from Montevideo to Buenos Aires several times a day, and also between Colonia and Buenos Aires. And you can see this is their terminal in Montevideo, and this is, for example, their latest boat. This is the fastest boat of this kind in the world. You can go from, they just brought this in about 2 months ago. You can go from Montevideo to Buenos Aires in 2 hours, 12 minutes. That's how they advertise it, and that's how exactly what it is. This is a huge boat. It takes cars. I think it's about like 300 cars or 400 cars and about 1,000 people, something like that. This is their same terminal, but in Colonia. You can see, once again, it's modern, it's clean. You know, it's a place where you feel comfortable, you know. Now, this is, for example, is the road between Montevideo and Punta del Este. Once again, you see it's good infrastructure. It's easy to get around. Going back and forth from Montevideo to Punta del Este or to Colonia, you have this 4-lane road, which is, you know, easy to go along. There's little traffic, really, except on very few days in the year on the high season in January. Now, what about the other aspects of infrastructure? We have the power grid. 98% of the population has access to electricity. We have a very, very good infrastructure in providing electricity to all of our population. This is the building for the Antel, which is the telecommunications company. And, well, there's 100% mobile phone coverage. broadband internet. It's available through landlines, fiber optic, and mobile. You couldn't believe how good it is. I use my mobile internet to Skype and to video Skype anywhere I am, and works perfectly well, just on the internet that I have on my phone. So it is a very good service. It's available, and that's part of the infrastructure that Uruguay has been building. What about energy? Well, 35% of our energy comes from hydroelectric. We have 3 important dams, one of them shared with Argentina. But the big move that's going on at this moment is that the government has put a very, very ambitious goal, which it's coming very strong, and it's doing very well. And it seems that it is very reasonable that we will reach this goal, which is by the year 2030 to have 35% of all our energy be derived from wind energy. Of course, we all know the benefits of that. You know, it's a clean energy, and this is all done. But these are all private investments. These are a private sector who invests in setting up the windmills, and then the state purchases the energy from these developments, and this is well, it is a very ambitious goal that is going very strong and very well. So, all this said, and we've talked about you know, all these aspects of Uruguay, but what is in it for you? And well, why does it offer a perfect balance between investment and lifestyle? Well, if you're looking for a place where you can expand your riches in extraordinary ways and multiply your assets, well, you should look somewhere else. That is not going to happen in Uruguay. Because Uruguay is a small country with a very small market where, for example, if you set up an industry, well, you would have no market to sell your products. Labor is not inexpensive. Actually, it's quite expensive. So it's not a place to establish a business, a corporation. Okay? If you really, I mean, of course, you can always set up a business, but a working business, well, I'm sure there are many other places in the world that are a lot better for that, you know? But if you're looking for a place where you could establish yourself, either part or full-time, and at the same time be able to make some investments that allow you to diversify your assets, and that this place had the potential at some point in time to be called home, and it would be a place where you would feel secure, are welcome, have access to the comfort that you're used to, are entertained, can easily communicate with and travel to the US, enjoy everyday life, and be free. And at the same time, if you could diversify your assets by investing in real estate in a place where your assets would be safe. Why? Because there's respect of law, because there are no arbitrary government seizures, because there is certainty in the purchase process, because it is very secure, all the properties are registered in public registers, it is a very straightforward process, there's no uncertainty when you purchase a property. Because there's market stability, there are very few mortgages. In markets like Punta del Este, the percentage of property that is being bought through a mortgage is 0, none, it doesn't exist. 100% of every property bought and sold in Punta del Este is a 100% cash deal, all up front. So, that is in Punta del Este. In other markets like Montevideo, well, it's not so much, but it's about a 10%. So it is very low. So this is a huge, huge hedge against any hiccups of the economy. People do not owe money on their property, on their real estate. So if the economy has a little hiccup, well, people are not in distress. They do not have to, you know, they won't have the bank calling them, hey, pay me, you know, your mortgage. That's not going to happen because they've already paid for it. So when that happens, well, of course, then it's a big protection against, well, bubbles, obviously, and then, you know, big falls. So that's a great market asset, you know, that our market has. A place where you could move them freely, that your assets, you could buy and sell anytime. You could move your cash in and out anytime without having to explain anything to anybody. okay? And that's free flow of cash and capital, and you can sell and you can buy. That you're not taxed to death, but you would be taxed at a 12% income and capital gains, which is, by all international standards, really very reasonable and very low, and where property taxes are overall are very low. And of course, also a place where your investment at this would get and would generate you some interesting ROI. Now, for example, if you invested in a place like Punta del Este, well, there's a very interesting combination that you can do there, because Punta del Este is a market where there's a high season, which is 2 months a year, just January and February. And during those 2 months, really the market just goes crazy. It skyrockets. So just as a rule of thumb, you could think, for example, if you owned a property in Punta del Este and you compare it to a similar property, for example, in Montevideo, well, for those 2 months in Punta del Este, renting your property there, you would get the same money, the equivalent, for example, for 10 months in Montevideo. But the interesting thing is that you've used your property only 2 months, and then the other 10 months, it's free for you to use there. So you have a very high return on 2 months, which allows you to combine your investment with actually using your property. Now, if you want to exclusively invest and you're not going to use, well, perhaps it makes more sense to invest in a place like Montevideo, and you would lease year-round. If you lease year-round your property, well, overall, you would get a little bit more money than in Punta del Este, but the property would not be available there for you to use. So if you're considering a combination, well, for example, a market like Punta del Este makes a lot of sense. So basically, if these things that we've been talking about, if this is what you're looking for, then Uruguay is just for you. So you know that, and this is, you know that real estate brokers are full of BS, and that's not only in the US, that's internationally, I have to tell you. And it's like that also in Uruguay. So I don't want you to take my word, you know, for all the things that we've been talking about. So let me share with you how your life in Uruguay could be. And we're going to see here several pictures and basically of everyday life and things that you would be doing in Uruguay. So this is, for example, a place where you could live. This is in Punta del Este, a typical low-rise in Punta del Este. This is, well, these are condos which are right across the sea. And this is a house in a gated community called El Quijote, somewhat inland. And this is the kind, well, this is an apartment building right next to the peninsula in Punta del Este. This is a low-rise also. And, well, with these things, you just start getting an idea, you know, of the kind of property that is available. You can see the quality of these properties, and you can see that they're a very good high level. This is a gated community, small gated community, which is like a boating community. You could have you can have a small boat here. That's a lagoon. Actually, it's not onto the sea. Well, as we can see, this is a beach. This is a house on the beachfront. Now, that's how you could live, or the places where you could live. Now, this is where you could shop. This is a shopping mall. As you can see, it's modern. There's, you know, all kinds of things. This is the mall also in Punta del Este. The other one was in Montevideo, what we just saw. This is Tienda Inglesa. This is very important because if you ever come to Uruguay and you decide to set foot there, I'm sure you'll be using the services of Tienda Inglesa. Tienda Inglesa is a great store that, amongst other things, they have an amazing service. This is we call them supermarkets, but really they sell everything. It's like a kind of very a high standard Walmart, but in a different standard of the quality of what they do. You can order everything online. They take it to your house. They charge you $5, and it doesn't matter where you are. They take that and they put everything on the countertop. You'd never even have to go to the supermarket, you know, to purchase your groceries or anything. You just order everything online. They bring it home, and it couldn't be more simpler. And the website, believe me, it's great. It's an amazing website. It's very clear. It has tons and tons of products. This is, you know, also a typical. This would be an interior a view of the products that you could see in a place like Tienda Inglesa. These are, well, this is a clothes store, furniture store. These are the kinds of places that you could go into to purchase things. Now, where could you dine? Well, this is a typical, restaurant in La Barra, which is a community, and we can see here overseeing the ocean front. This is in Montevideo, a sushi restaurant called Bamboo. This is in Montevideo downtown. It's a bar, to have coffee. And, well, this is a typical parrillada, which is pretty much our national preferred meat. And, and then, well, this is another just more casual place. Now, this is where you would go to the movies. You can see it's a modern movie theater. It has 10 theaters, and well, there are 3 of these in Montevideo. There's one of them in Punta del Este. As you can see, it's modern, it's new. It has all the latest movies. One thing which is interesting, all the movies in Uruguay are in English. Well, the ones that come from, of course, from the US, and they're not translated. They are subtitled. So you go to the movies, you understand everything. So for a little while, you don't have to learn Spanish, but just only for the time that when you're there in the movies. For the rest, well, you should do the effort. Now, this is a theater. This is the Solis Theater in Montevideo. And this is another theater in another place in Montevideo. Now, what could you do on a weekend? Well, here we'll be seeing some hotels, beach restaurants. This is Piriápolis, the marina at Piriápolis. This is a hotel. You could stay here. You could go to a winery. You could enjoy some wine tasting. You can enjoy some cheese tasting. You can enjoy walking, on the waterfront by the lighthouse. You can participate, in events that are organized permanently, like, for example, old cars, and well, you can get to know the city, go to the Conrad, you can play golf, you could sail. All of these things go on in Uruguay, in Punta del Este, and in Montevideo. You could also go to the casino. And, well, this is not here, just along the aisle. This is Montevideo, Maroñas Entertainment. So we do have casinos also. You could enjoy cultural activities. You could go to a museum. This is a museum in Punta del Este. You could go to museums that talk about the history of Uruguay. We have several of these, of course, along our country. You could go to historical places. These are all things that you can enjoy in your everyday life. These are things that, of course, if you decide to set foot in Uruguay, well, one thing is for sure, you're going to have quite a bit of time. And that's the whole purpose. And really there, you have many things to enjoy your time. That's what I'm trying here to share with you. Your life would be pleasant. Your life could be very enjoyable. You have lots of things to do and to really, get out of life. So this is Colonia, which is also a historical city on the west of the country, and well, this is Montevideo, one of the main squares there, it's right where the cathedral is, and this is part of the marina in Punta del Este. So basically, that is what I had to share with you today. Really, well, this afternoon we'll be talking about more detail. For those of you who are thinking, about more details regarding specific real estate, well, what I wanted to do today was a general introduction. I wanted to share with you what Uruguay is about, how you would feel there, and its main characteristics. Now, for those of you who are interested in learning in more detail and in more depth about, specific real estate, well, please do join me this afternoon on a workshop. We can talk about that, and obviously, well, what I really suggest, and it is very simple to do, for those of you who might have an interest, is to plan a week in Uruguay. Come to visit. It's very simple, it's straightforward. All you have to do is just book your flight. Or first, you can send me an email, and you tell me, hey, Sancho, I'm planning to go for a week there. And I'll take you from there, I'll help you throughout the process. You have to book your flight. I will suggest you different hotels. You can, and you choose, what feels better, we will plan for that week. Some days we will spend together. We'll talk about, perhaps we'll spend the whole day in Montevideo, going to the different neighborhoods. I will tell you about the city. I will tell you about the dynamics, about the characteristics of each place. We will talk about politics. We'll talk about the economy. We will talk about Uruguayan society. I will help you understand all of these issues. And of course, I will be getting some feedback from you, understanding what it is that you want to achieve, what are your goals. And we'll work together in seeing if we can match those goals to what Uruguay has to offer. And that would be the whole point of actually going a week there. So some other day you would be on your own, you would go, perhaps you rent a car, and we work together. I suggest, okay, why do you go this place or that other? Then perhaps for another day we would meet in Punta del Este. We would do the same thing as we did in Montevideo. So basically, you have nothing to lose. But believe me, you do have a lot to discover. So do contact me if you think that this is a way to go, and I will help you set everything up. So there's my contact information, and thank you very much, and I hope that I can see you this afternoon at our workshop. Thank you very much for listening.